Well, now I have to cough.
It's Jen Lux. How are you?
You mean
How's life?
hi. Life is good. Life is real good. All is well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I am. This is gonna sound like bullshit, but I'm genuinely excited about doing this. We seem like we've been talking about it long enough.
We have indeed. I am happy to be here. I know we were laughing about this earlier. I am in Asheville, North Carolina. And for any of my advanced brethren who are watching today, I'll let you know that I walked around this very old, very historic hotel for at least 20 minutes trying to find like a ficus to steal or a palm, like anything to help make this situation look better. I have taken apart some lamps to try to get some lighting because this room is so yellow. But there were no stealable fici to be had. So here we are. This is the best we've got. Don't judge me. I promise professionally I do a much better job.
Is it ficuses? Is it fici? Like,
I don't know. I like fici. I like
Fici.
fici. I think that's what we're gonna roll with.
We're gonna officially say
everybody.
fici.
And there's no one that's ever worked in politics that hasn't stolen a ficus or like a frame or a stack of books, shelving out of a hotel lobby or hallway. And I really tried. The only thing I could find was anything, people,
flags.
you name it. You name it. We've all been there. The only thing I could find was like this gigantic pottery. And I was afraid that if somebody saw me like carrying this thing down the hallway that I'd get kicked out. And I'd really like to stay here for a few days. So this is the best we've got. Sorry, it's yellow in here.
You just reminded me of the first event I ever did with our mutual friend, the Rick Wilson. And it was a hotel in Orlando for someone whose name I won't mention because he doesn't deserve to be mentioned. And the thing that stood out, maybe you probably know who it is if I were to say it to you off air.
I got it.
You would know who it was. But the overriding memory I have is Rick running around the periphery of the ballroom with his iPhone and the charger hanging out, and every 10 feet plugging his phone in, you know, and doing like a media gaggle and plugging his phone in and then unplugging it, going over here, plugging his phone in, like,
yep.
You know, the glories of advance work.
The glories of advance work. Politics is not glamorous.
Okay, so let's jump into that. I'm glad you said that.
All right.
So it's kind of a funny thing for, and I don't know how to say this, I'm going to say this to you as a friend. It's a funny thing for a female to say, because I think a lot of us in this world, and I say us and I'll say myself, the problem is that we think of this work as being guy work, right? Men do this kind of stuff. And this is kind of one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on, because we're just going to jump into it. What the hell? So
do it.
I think it's interesting because in politics, for both of the viewers at home, and thank you both for joining us. Usually in politics, there's not a lot of women that do field work or advance work. And I know it's going to be controversial. I'm going to get a text or whatever. Usually it's fundraising or comms, right? And I'm not saying anything that, is out of bounds. And I think one of the things that always interested me about you is that you were one of the first women that I met, and I've been doing this a long time, who, did campaign management, or did advance work, or did field work, and kind of came up that way and not the other direction. So kind of explain to me how that worked. Like how was that intentional? Did it just happen? Like, how did that go?
Yeah, nothing about my work in politics was necessarily intentional. I think, I never really thought I'd get into politics. I originally started out wanting to be an attorney, and then I learned I really don't like conflict, so I went into politics, which makes no sense. But
yes.
Anyway, there was something about the ops process that I liked, that appealed to me. I loathe fundraising. Any campaign I've ever run, that's like when people are like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, I will literally, you name it, we're bringing in a fundraiser. That's not my forte. I also don't like, I'm already harassing candidates about enough. I don't need to make them work a call sheet.
You're also too nice to be a fundraiser.
Yeah, probably, maybe.
Why aren't you making your calls? Get on the phone.
Yeah. I bet there's some candidates out there that would disagree with your statement there. But with that being said, yeah, no, I kind of fell into it backwards. I, had done some grassroots work for Bush Cheney 04, like legitimate, like phone banking kind of things, and helping to run the phone bank, and really believing in that. But for my national work, and then I went back and worked in the healthcare and like a normal human. And then my national work kind of just happened, and I ended up on that side of the house. And I will say, you're right to say that it's rare that there are women on the advanced side of the house, on the ops side of the house, certainly campaign management. But it's the only thing that was ever appealing to me or made sense to me. It's also the closest you can get. It's part of the reason that I enjoy politics, is when you think about serving that cause greater and getting behind a person or a cause that's important to you. That's hard to do. Not that it can't be done from a fundraising or, a comms perspective, but that stuff was never on my radar. It was always the ops world, the management world for me.
So go back to the whole, wanted to go to law school. Actually, let's start earlier than that. So, let's start earlier. So I found out today, and this was interesting, and maybe this is why I like you, is that you're a Midwesterner. So you're from Indianapolis, which is like 3 of our 5 viewers are probably from Indianapolis, including Josh.
Well, my brother's on, so that's 1.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, Josh's music, who we just played, is from Indianapolis.
Perfect.
So you start there, and then you mentioned a year. I'm assuming that you were an infant when you moved to Florida, based on the year you sent me.
Barely alive.
So you end up in Tampa, which is basically where everybody from the Midwest ends up in the west coast of Florida. And then go to college. Where'd you go to college?
Undergrad, I went to Troy State University when it was still called Troy State University. And then I got my MBA at USF.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Josh is texting me. He shouldn't be texting me during the show. He knows better. And so then at what point do you go from, what was the entry point into campaign work?
My initial entry point was for Bush Cheney was seeing John Kerry as the alternative to President Bush and wanting to do something about that. There's a whole road I could go down there, but it was really about wanting to get the candidate elected. And I think that that's something that's interesting because it's been the case throughout all of the campaign work that I've ever done. I have certain rules kind of set up for myself around that about who I work with and who I don't work with. It meant that I worked with a lot less candidates and took on a lot less campaigns. But yeah, so that was initially it. After that, and that was a great ride with some fantastic people. You know, I was working as a drug rep and, you know, life was good. And then
this is a family show. Like you got to be careful. This is a family.
And that's when that's when I got involved with the McCain campaign, and that changed everything for me.
So how did that come about?
Yeah. I'll try to tell the short story. I read a book. There's a book called The Nightingale Song. And in it, it talks about Senator McCain, Oliver North, Dan Webb. There's like 5 Naval Academy graduates. And it talked about their service and, you know, kind of what they went through and the different paths that they had. And when I read it, and that was my real first introduction to this man, John McCain, and I wanted to know more. And then I read an incredible book by John and a guy named Mark Salter, who is a fantastic writer. And I read Faith in My Fathers, and then I found out he was running for president. I went to legitimately like a grassroots meeting. I thought I would end up doing the same thing for the McCain campaign that I did with Bush Cheney. And it was the summer that everything fell apart and all of the staff left. And so it was the summer of 2007, like maybe like May. And we went from like 40 people to like 3 of us meeting in a church basement. And that was the McCain campaign. And so when he would come to town for like the debate at the Mahaffey Theater, you know, they'd call us to find, you know, a place for a debate rally party and do everything from do the actual advance work. I think that was some of my real first advance. I had done a little bit for Bush Cheney locally. But anyway, all of that went well. And they asked me to come up to New Hampshire to do advance work up there through a series of working with some really incredible people with whom I'm still very close and connected. They asked me to come on full time. And so that's how that all started. But it really was always driven by Senator McCain and what he was trying to accomplish and kind of like serving. That was like one of my real first serving the cause greater, you know, than yourself. And he would maybe bristle at that idea that he was that for me, but it's been the continued kind of ribbon throughout everything I've done ever since.
Did you feel that there was any, and I think I know the answer to this, but did you feel being a woman on the campaign and especially being senior staff and field staff, did you feel, you know, either uncomfortable or out of place or felt like you were looked at differently or treated differently in any way?
Never. Not, and I think that's the interesting thing about my political experience is that I kind of did it backwards. Like I worked nationally before I worked locally or at the state level. Never, ever once on a national level was I treated differently as a woman. I ended up actually having a team of women that rolled up to me. We were called the Blantourage. And they're all absolutely fantastic people. Very, very capable. Some of the best advance and ops people I've ever worked with. we weren't treated any differently as women. That story could not be more different at the state level and what I experienced in state government.
Okay, that's kind of, I mean, that sort of made me think about it. Yeah, and I was like, all right, how do I ask that question? Okay, so do you think was it a cultural thing? And where did that start? Or where did that come from?
On the national level?
Yeah, with specifically McCain's campaign.
Yeah, I mean, all campaigns are top down, right? Mm-hmm. Like everything, the culture of the campaign, what's acceptable, what's not. I was, maybe it was out of desperation because no one else was around, but I was working as, Senator McCain's lead before I ever started working with Cindy, or really anybody else in the campaign. And so it wasn't even a question. Like we had, there was a really great trip to Orlando, and there was a woman who traveled with me, and she was and I was the advanced lead on the staff side, and she was the press lead, and it was like the first all-female lead that had happened in a long time, but it or maybe ever on that campaign. She and I, by the way, still incredibly close, which is one of the beautiful things about the relationships you make at that level. But yeah, no, I can't account for what drove that other than to say it was never even a question. And there were very senior females in his apparatus and still helping to drive the legacy today.
Yeah, so I am blessed to have a pretty decent friendship with Stuart Stevens, and partially because I just sort of stalked him.
It's one way to go about it.
Which is probably decent advice for people who are getting into politics. And sometimes you can just stalk people and it eventually works. When I was, this isn't about me, but when I was getting into politics and I started, became a professional basically 2000-ish. And there weren't, I didn't go to college for this. I didn't intern in college. I didn't do ledge races. I didn't, my parents aren't political, and I'll ask you about this in a second. So I didn't really know like how you did this. And so I went to the library and was trying to find basically books on campaign management, like no joke. And there was like,
what did you find?
So there was like some guy, there was like some dude in New York City, like how to win a local election or some crap from like 1972, right? And it was all about.
It's like when you come across those old advanced, like those. Yes. I have like super old advanced binders. They're hilarious. I would love to read that.
It was like self-published. Like those cheap ass, like you would get Amazon now, like the Create Space. It was like self-published in this cheap paperback, and it was like from 1976.
Did it have that like claw binder? Because that was awesome.
Yes. And so like, and I devoured it because like, I didn't know anybody who did this. Like I didn't know, I had been a volunteer, but I had worked in a whole bunch of races by then, but I didn't know like how you took that next step. And so I started with that. And actually I will tell people that learning politics from the ground up, advanced work and field work is the best way to do it. I think one of the things, I'll get on my soapbox for a second. I think one of the reasons why campaign work is bullshit now is because everybody wants to do top down. Everybody wants to be, I realize what I'm about to say, I'm going to be a big star in a national race and I'm going to do, thanks for not laughing at me when I said that. But, I learned my first races were like mayor of Southport, Indiana, which you actually know where that is, I think. And it's like 2,000 voters and it's, you learn that way. That's how I learned the business. And there's a segue I'm getting to. So, I shit the bed a bunch of times and kind of figured some things out. And then one day I'm in the library and I knew who Stuart was because I was sort of a political junkie, but there was a book in there called The Whole Enchilada, which I own. And it's not in here, I don't think. But I own it. And it was basically Stu's memoir of the Bush race. and him moving to Texas and all the bullshit that went on, and yada yada yada. And it was the first time that I had read it. Now, listen, I read What It Takes, right? Like we've all read that. Like there's a couple of those kinds of books, but I had never read like an insider firsthand campaign book, campaign memoir, whatever you want to call it. And so I started kind of obsessively stalking Stewart. This is true. And then I think I eventually got his email address, and then at some point,
off of a sign-in sheet.
Something. It was some weird. I can't remember. Or somebody got it for me, or maybe I finally Googled him and found his firm in DC and emailed him. I can't remember exactly how it went down. But the long story short is, I've been blessed over the years to hear a lot of really funny John McCain campaign stories from Stu, who, of course, was one of the two primary sources of Game Change. If people have read the book and seen the series and whatever. I'd heard most of the stories from Stu, and if you've ever talked to him, well, Chris, you have, tells it in sort of his mix of Deep South, New Englander, late 60s hippie, style. Yeah, dude. So when we were skiing that day, and so I've heard most of the stories. What is one clean, family-friendly story that you can tell without anybody going to jail?
Me choke. About anybody going to jail?
Without anybody going to jail. Like, you can tell the story, nobody goes to jail.
I was like, I can't tell the stories about people going to jail. Mostly because they got out of going to jail. Yeah, I don't, yeah, there's a lot there.
See, the problem is there are too many qualifiers. Clean, and it won't put anybody in jail. Like, that pretty much eliminates most campaign stories.
Yeah, I think for us, that team was truly, like we used to say, we're just this like band of pirates, right? Like, or the island of misfit toys. And I don't know that there's any stories that I could tell that wouldn't implicate somebody.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I will say that my iPhoto role from that time is could in careers probably, and
yes.
nothing salacious, but just we had everybody. I mean, just like silly things, nothing like inappropriate, not that, but just it was a fun group to be around. It was a real fun group to be around. And we're all, and still are to this day, wildly protective of each other. And even, you've got those people on the campaign who are, I'm trying not to use, a mean word here in case my niece is watching, but maybe there's not a nice way to say it, kind of like idiots, but it was okay because they were our idiots, right?
Yes.
Like they're like, guys that would give a sit rep, they'd call for a sit rep, which is, for those who don't know, just the, press people greeters at a particular place for the candidate's arrival. And, when that was asked for over the radio en route to the RON hotel, a particular person was like, well, once you walk into the lobby, you're going to turn to the right, walk approximately 20 paces. We're holding the elevators. You'll get in he gave the entire like map for how and we're just all listening on radio like, what in the world? But again, he was our idiot. So
yeah,
it's fine. But if we were ever all out and something happened, he would be someone that we would take care of. There are great stories there was an event, it was the VFW in Orlando in, I think it was like August of 2008. And we were speaking, then Senator Obama was speaking, and President Bush was speaking. So all three teams were in the same hotel and at the same bars at the same time. And there were some very interesting stories that came out of that trip, including like walking, and y'all earmuffs if there's kids. I'm not saying anything like I'm not saying a bad word, but it's not nice. But like, I can remember like walking into the ladies' room and looking down and being like, those are wallabies. Those belong to a man. What are they? Oh, there's a female shoes in there too. Okay, I'm gonna just wash my hands and go. But you know, and nothing awful. Just, you know, it is what it is. But that, I don't think I could tell any other stories that, you know, would implicate anybody in that in our campaign family. We're all, like I said, fiercely protective of one another.
Yeah.
Very specific to that campaign, for the record.
Fair enough. I have a memory. So in 2008, we moved back to Florida in 2008, and I had a chance, primarily because I had a chance to work for Tom Rooney, who was running for his first congressional race. That's a long story. And
we should tell that someday, by the way. I feel like you should flip the script on yourself. Like,
no, I don't like talking about myself. I do a show and I don't like talking about myself. But the short story was, so Tom had, and I think you know this, but for the audience, Tom had been in the Army, was an Army lawyer. I will tell you this. So I will tell you a funny story. So what the hell? So I had been asked to come down. Tom's campaign chair was a family friend, and I had been asked to come down because he was running in the district where my parents live and still live. And so his campaign chair was a family friend, and I get a call one day, and he's like, "Hey, man, you know, I got this guy. We're running for Congress, and it was in, you know, we had some shenanigans go on, and the seat is open, and like none of us, we got this guy running for it. He's a nice guy, and he's a lawyer, and he was in the Army, but like none of us really know what we're doing, and you know." Are you interested in coming down and helping us out? And I'm like, well, I sort of know that primary. It was like a 7-way primary. It was like a former state rep and a couple county commissioners, and I can't remember everybody was running, and some self-funders, and like, yeah, your guy's last. Like you guys, like you can't raise any money, and I was involved in a special election, a congressional special election in Indiana. Can't say Indianapolis for some reason. And I was kind of wrapped up in that. And I was like, yeah, you know, good luck to you guys. You know, give me a call when you win. Ha, ha, ha. So August, I get a call. And we'd already been talking about moving. And, you know, it'd been on the cards anyway. And I get a call from Gary. And Gary says, hey, man, we won. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, we won. Like, you know, you're going to come down, right? It's like, okay. So, like, we eventually make our way down. And so I walk in the office. This is a funny story. So when I walked in the office first day, first off, it's to this day the nicest campaign office I've ever been in my entire life. Like, so think about like a Class A.
Those words don't office. All go together.
No. Like, like picture
like set up 6-foot tables, some pipe and drape maybe.
No. I like right off the bat, that was my first warning sign. I walk in the office and it's like the nicest law office you've ever seen. There's an actual receptionist at the front. There's like carpeting, there's like mahogany bookshelves, and there's ceramic tile and glass block wall. And I was like, what the hell is this? Sorry. Like, what are we doing here, right? So I'm confused, and I walk in and I see Tom, who's my size, right? Big guy, big strapping, Midwestern looking guy. Hey, how's it going? I'm Tom. So come on in, let's talk. So I walk in his office, and his office is covered in Pittsburgh Steelers memorabilia.
As it
right?
would be, right?
And I looked,
as one does.
Yeah. That's the funny part. So I walk in and I'm looking around and I went,
"Oh no,
you're Rudy." That's a direct quote. It's exactly what I said to him. I go, "You're a Rudy."
Rudy. Oh,
you guys didn't tell me.
Good. That's so good.
It's a true story. He just started laughing.
Rooney.
He just started laughing. Tom has a very good sense of humor about being the son of a billionaire. Actually had a really, laughed about it. But I was like, oh, like now I understand.
This is
yeah. Like no wonder you have like the nicest office in town. Like it was like a downtown Stewart right on the circle. Like that was like the nicest office I've ever seen. So it was
kids
like
watching at home.
later.
That is not normal for politics.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Yeah. The last campaign I actually had a card table in the back of a former tile store with boxes of tiles stacked next to me where I kept my laptop. That's a true story.
That tracks. We ran Jamie Grant's first campaign, that fun 5-way primary, out of a karate dojo.
Mm-hmm. That sounds right.
Karate dojo, red carpeting, like gigantic space. It was fantastic. And I had like this little office that connected to like our campaign coordinator's little office. But that was it, karate dojo, and it smelled like a karate dojo. It was special.
I in that last campaign, I'm not going to mention the campaign name, but because he doesn't deserve the airtime. But I had found an old desk chair, like an old office chair, that actually fit me, which is unusual for me. And I think it was like in a dumpster or something. So I brought it in. And of course, it was the nicest chair in the whole office. Everybody had, the metal folding chairs. And
right.
And so I had taped a sign to it that said, if you steal this chair, I will fire you on the spot. And so I think I came in the next morning, and not only was the chair gone, but that sign was taped to the commode in the bathroom. So
perfect.
Yeah.
That's
what I was going to tell you, the funny thing I remembered about the race with Tom was I basically did advance work with Tom. So I was, I had like the southern half of Martin County, and then I ran a phone bank, and then I would drive him. I would just be like a body man. I was sort of like the backup body guy, right? So I had taken him down. I think this was 2 weeks before the race, or before Election Day, and Senator McCain was flying into Palm Beach, and flew the McCain jet into Palm Beach. It had been greeted by a couple. We were asked to be there, and we kind of lobbied for it, but we were asked to be there. And Tom was kind of bitchy about it because Tom sort of has this dour, I hate everything sucks kind of personality. And so we're there, and I'm not with Tom on a tarmac. Tom is out there, and of course he greets Senator McCain coming. I think he was the first one off the plane. In fact, we were thrilled because the next day the Palm Beach Post, the front picture was Tom greeting Senator McCain, which was perfect. Like, it made me look smart, like I actually did it. I didn't. Right. Confession. I had nothing to do with it. But I kind of light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, you can do that. Like, oh. So we get back to the office. I remember this. And somebody had given Tom like a swag bag of campaign stuff. And so we get back to the office, and Tom didn't talk the whole way back. He's not really a chatty kind of guy, if you know Tom, but people who don't know Tom, he's not like a friendly, chatty Cathy kind of guy. He's very introverted, doesn't like people, doesn't really like anything. He just does his thing. He's a thinker. I love Tom, by the way, but that's Tom. So get back to the office. And the only thing I remember was Tom took out a hat. There was one of the campaign ball caps, and it was McCain Palin, and he took it off and he goes, like, I'm going to wear this thing, and threw it across the office. Hit like a Mean Joe Greene, framed jersey on the wall, and flew off. Now, for the record, so I'm not attacking Tom here. It had nothing to do with the name on the top. So I'm just gonna say it that way. It had nothing to do with the name on the top. Tom adored Senator McCain. Had to do with the other name, which I don't know if we're going to talk about her or not. We can if you would like to. You know what? We should. Let's do that, because if we're going to talk about women in politics, and I didn't use that as a segue, but it's kind of an interesting segue.
It was nice.
So,
well done.
I have a theory, and I have actually talked to Stuart about this, and I'm going to keep my comments or my discussion with Stuart off the record. It's private. But I have discussed this with Stuart. I have my thesis, and if you don't want to answer this, I'm cool with it. My thesis is that
my second old fashioned, by the way, if you're wondering what I'm doing, because I feel like this is like going to be a big question, and this is probably I have an empty glass.
This is the good time to do it.
All right, it's happening. Go.
My thesis is that the selection of Sarah Palin set women in politics back by maybe 10 years.
Ooh, coming in hot. Here's what I'll tell you. So many places to start here.
wait. Before we do, Peter says hi. So
hi, Peter.
So we gotta
Peter's wife Michelle, another fantastic woman on the off side of the house.
Yes,
for sure. Met her first time I ever met her was at one of those campaign meetings before the campaign fell apart.
I think I met her.
And I think that's when she went to go work for Charlie Crist, I believe. President P5. That's a good one. That's a real good one.
Another good stories.
Good times right there. Good times right there. So here's the thing about Sarah Palin. I will say, first and foremost, she's exactly what she seems, right? Like, oh, please do, Peter. And tell her hi. She is, you betcha. I mean, that whole thing is 100% real. I was staffing her once for like her book tour or something. I don't know who, Doug McMarlin, may he rest in peace, brought me into her book tour. And I like held a door or something. And she's like, Jen, you're just so gosh darn awesome. And I'm just like, oh, this is real. This is happening. And I'll never forget it. But you know, I'm going to follow Senator McCain's lead here and not speak ill of her, but I will tell you this.
Fair.
The convention, John McCain wasn't the Republicans' first choice.
Fair.
There were people in the Republican Party, the Hillsborough County Republican Party, who I had worked with very closely on Bush Cheney for, who would not talk to me because I was supporting John McCain. Most of those folks were Romney people. By the way, love Governor Romney, Senator Romney now. We just call him the Gov, from campaign world. Worked on his campaign, worked with Ann, all of that. Love them. Love those guys. I mean, they were like our mortal enemy in New Hampshire, but it's all lovely now. But people, all to say, John McCain was not their first choice. And the convention floor, so I spent the majority of the convention. There's like that VIP box that sits there. And so Mrs. McCain, there's just like this like round robin of people that are like rotating in and out of that box. If you ever see footage of the campaign, I am on the side of the box, which is like carpeted on the side, like either like resting my head or walking to ensure that with the lights and everything going on, that Mrs. McCain knew like what seat she was going to, and then I would move. The floor, I say all that to say, the floor of the convention before Governor Palin, which by the way, we spent a whole day not knowing if it was Palin or Palin, like in countdown meetings, we're like, Palin,
right,
we had no idea.
Right.
But the floor of the convention before she spoke could not have been more, I don't even know the word for it. They were not happy to be there, right? And these are like the button wearing on the jean jacket, like right, like your grass tops. Like these people are like, all the things. The day after she spoke, people had names painted on their chest. They were freaking out about this particular woman. I think that I'm going to side with Senator McCain on not speaking ill of the choice. I think that there are a lot of women in politics who've done a lot more damage to women than Governor Palin.
Okay. Fair.
I'll leave it at that.
No, I would say I don't mind sharing this part of it. So what Stuart has said to me is, this is the one thing I will share, is that she was woefully unprepared, and not by her fault, that she was thrust into something that she was incredibly unprepared for. And she's probably, I think Stuart once said to me, it was basically like taking a seventh grade baseball player and starting him for the Yankees in the World Series. Like she had no idea what was going on, what to do, and didn't come out right or didn't come off correctly because she was incredibly unprepared. Now, what she did after that is kind of up to her, and that's not, I'm not going to get into that part. But in her defense, she was incredibly unprepared for being thrust into the spotlight.
The other thing I will say is that she was, and you see this happen with new candidates where they are over consulted.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you know, if they ask you what your favorite color is, you can't say blue because it might be offensive to X, Y, and Z and don't whatever. And so you get to a point where you're like, you know, someone's like, what's your name? And I'm like, I don't know. You know, and so I think that.
Well, it's the famous, what do you read question, right? Like she didn't know how to answer.
Like such an easy question, right? But you're this governor from Alaska and you're, I mean, put into a situation with you know, Katie Couric of all people, who can be quite intimidating in person. And I've never been interviewed by her. She accidentally picked up my purse once after an interview and I had to like chase her down. It was strange, but anyway, she was interviewing Mrs. McCain. But anyway, there was an awkward interaction. But and then you have so many people weighing in, like, do this, don't. If you are coming to the table not kind of being thrust into the spotlight, and then you have 400 people telling you what to do, what not to do, you start to overthink it. And you see that a lot with candidates who aren't just, it's like that West Wing episode, Let Bartlett be Bartlett, right? Yes. If your candidate's not coming to the table with basic knowledge and principles of the policy and at the level they're supposed to be at, and then you try to like educate them in mass, the result's never going to be good.
So what do you think we learned from the Sarah Palin experience?
You know, I would love for that answer to be that when we're looking at running mates, we should look at, or when we're looking at elected officials in general, that we should be looking at people who have the basic fundamental ideas about the policy and what they want to accomplish, not what office they want to hold. And Governor Palin wasn't that at all. Like, she wasn't lobbying for that position, right? But not like that. But I don't know that today's politics allows that anymore. You know, it's not always the guy with the message, the guy that is ready for the spotlight that's going to win an election, especially right now. You know, I always say there are two kinds of candidates. There are candidates that know who or what they want to be, and there's candidates who know what they want to do.
Ooh.
And you should always, and I would give this advice to anybody getting into politics, but specifically women, because I would say it's probably harder for us to bounce back. But if you're the guy that knows what they want to be, is like the guy that like loves wearing the pin in public, probably the same, like he probably interned and like on the Hill and wore like his badge out to the restaurant afterwards, or like happy hour, same guy, maybe like stuffed in a locker guy, that guy. But like, he wants the pin. He wants to go to the like chicken dinners. He wants to have people treat him like he's a big deal because the office that he's in. Steer clear of those candidates and of those electeds, as opposed to those who know what they want to do and they have ideas. And it may be even different than where you philosophically align, but there is at least philosophy going on, right? It's a long way to answer your question, but I think that would be, you know, part of that lesson is really aligning with folks who want to accomplish something, are there to serve the cause greater, are there because they want to make a change, not because they want to be. And by the way, it's not cool. Like it's like this like false cool. It's not because everybody can see through that. But if you want to sit in a bubble and act like you're special, that's fine. But like if that's what they want to do, then I would, for people getting into politics, recommend aligning yourself with people who know what they want to do.
Do you think it's still possible? So like I'm old enough because I'm significantly older than you are.
I'll go with that. I don't know if that's true.
Significantly,
we'll run with it.
Significantly older.
Significantly older.
But when I was
getting the vaccine in that first round of vaccines, how did it treat you?
That's funny because I already got it. So that's why that joke is funny. That's what.
My work here is done. Go ahead. Tip your weight.
When I was coming up in the business, it wasn't unusual to have friends on the other side of the aisle.
Yes.
In fact, it was pretty normal. Like you would run a state house race, or you would run a local mayor's race, or you would run, even gubernatorial races that I worked on, because you see everybody. You're at the same events every single damn day. Like it's like a traveling circus. People don't realize that. And so you get to know. Then as a campaign manager, you have to have the contact with those other people. You have to make arrangements. You got to talk about debate scheduling. You got to, joint appearances, stuff that I'm not going to talk about that we talk about behind the scenes. And you get to know everybody. And for me, it was really normal to have friends. In fact, that's kind of how we became a Republican, because I knew I had worked with so many Republicans who I got to know over the years who recruited me over to the dark side, as they jokingly tell me. And so do you think that is something that, because I don't think that's the case any longer. Like, I feel like everything now is so scorched earth and so combative and so screw you, I'm going to destroy your life. I mean, do you think that's still possible, or am I just being negative?
Well, being significantly younger than you are, I am, there's a couple of questions there. The first of which is, do I think it's possible? Absolutely. And I think it's needed. Some of my absolute closest friends that may have started in the process, or people that I trust, or that are in what I like to call like my kitchen cabinet. You have those folks that like you don't make a job change without talking to, or, when something's going on, they're people that can really be trusted, are from the other side of the aisle. And I think that as people who work in the political field, I think it's absolutely necessary that we keep members of both parties, and independents certainly, in our circle. I think it's going to result in not only more well-balanced humans, but even the policy. And I'm a campaign person. I'm not an administration person, but even from a campaign perspective, the way that we see policy or advise on policy is going to be different if we're taking a look at it from the perspective of the greater good, who may not always be a Republican. I mean, gosh, it's no secret. In this last election, I was not a proponent of the Republican candidate, and as printed in the Washington Post, to many people's surprise. But I think it's those conversations that are most important, and I see them happening less often. It's, if you disagree with someone, so even thinking about a primary, like if someone is like, I really like them except for their stance on global warming, it's like, okay, well, you're not going to agree with them on absolutely everything, right? Or my absolute favorite, this is my new favorite, and I think folks on Twitter call it the whataboutism.
Yes.
And it's like someone, so we're having this conversation, right? We're having this conversation and it might happen on social media. It might happen over cocktails pre-COVID, or 6 feet apart, whatever. But you're having this conversation. And so finally someone converts to thinking like, you know what, I've thought about this a lot and I actually agree with X, Y, and Z. But then everybody will jump on and be like, well, what about your thoughts on this? Or what about that one time you said X, what about, and it's like, guys, if we don't want people to change their minds, why are we having the conversation? Right? Like that part is absolutely mind blowing to me. It should be cool. I'm really glad we talked about this and I'm glad you now see it the way that we see it. Let's talk about something else. Yeah, that whole, it's so polarized now and it's so unkind. It's very personal. I don't know how to call back from that one. And I've gone way beyond your question. But I think the bottom line is I have people that I trust and rely on that are members of a different party than I am. And I think in order to be effective as a Politico, certainly on the op side, you absolutely have to.
Yeah, I mean, for me, officially, I'm NPA. Like, I went and switched especially after the whole insurrection. That was my last. I was going to do it before, but I had a couple friends who were running in the primary up here who I wanted to vote for, and so I left. I stayed Republican through the election, and then I switched. So I'm officially NPA. And I have said since I've lived in Tallahassee, so we're going on, good Lord, we're going on 4 years, I think. No, that can't be right. I think 4 years.
Here's
this month. Dude, yeah. Math. I mean, listen, you major in history, so you don't have to do math. Like, that's the whole point. But my circle is much more Democrats than Republicans, partially because Republicans think I'm a traitor. And so, like, I basically have been ostracized, because obviously I've been somewhat vocal in my stance. And I find myself, and I don't feel like I've changed any of my views. Like, I don't feel like I'm still a fiscal conservative. I still believe in foreign policy. I still believe in strong national defense. Like, I still believe in the things I think I've always believed in. I think I do. I don't, I ask a lot of my friends pretty often, like, have I changed? And they're like, yeah, not really. Like, you're pretty much the same guy. But I get along, I find far less suspicion from Democrats than I do from Republicans.
Very well said.
Suspicion is probably the word I'm looking for, where I can call up a Republican friend. Like, I've been, see, this is, you can tell Curtis is related to me because, it's my favorite cousin. I've been doing this long enough that I have people who were personal friends of mine who are now members of the legislature here in Tallahassee and who are now members of Congress, who I've known since they were normal people. They were insurance agents or they ran a business or whatever, and now they're elected officials. And some of them don't speak to me any longer. Like, I can't even, like, I'll text them or I'll, during session, hey, let's go grab a beer. Curtis, we talked about you today. I'll call you later. Because it's funny that he said that. I actually had this conversation with my wife today. And I won't get a response. And yet I will, like, from a personal standpoint, hang out with Democrats. Like, I will tell you, if I were to put together a list of the 10 legislators that I know the best, who I can call at a moment's notice or I can hang out with, 8 of them are Democrats.
Yeah.
Easily.
I think there's more room for, I don't know how to say this nicely.
No, say it. What the hell?
Like, I think that there's more room.
Listen, nobody's watching anyway. Just Curtis and Peter. So,
perfect.
We're good.
It's just us. It's just us, and like my brother and Curtis. So it's fine. And Peter, and maybe my niece, TBD. I hope she's in bed. But there is more room for conversation and veering from, which, by the way, you're not wrong on. That's the kind. I'm a McCain Republican, right? Strong national defense, small government, all of those things. The party is somewhere else now, and not all of the party. I'm not going to make that broad statement, but a lot of the party is. Sure. But there's more room to not be lockstep outside of the Republican Party. That said, there are a lot of very principled Republicans who still want to have the conversation, who over the last year I've received texts from and had very spirited debates on my not supporting the president as the leader of the party at the time.
Oh, same here.
But some of those folks, the ones who cared to reach out at all, wanted the conversation. A lot of people, apparently Curtis included with the rhino statement, see any type of deviation as like a traitorous offense, or like you're not really a Republican. And it's like, no, it's not that, but it's also okay if we don't all think the same way. And by the way, we shouldn't all think the same way. I'm going to be really passionate about things that other people just don't care about. Some of those things align to the Republican Party, some of them don't. But if we agreed 100%, we'd be running, right? Like I'd be the guy in the arena, but I'm not the guy in the arena. Like I'm the guy behind the guy for a reason. And that part's just nonsensical to me. Like the people that just don't talk to you anymore because you aren't in lockstep. We don't want everybody in lockstep. That's not what this country is about, right?
No, there's a word for that. Like there's an actual term for everybody marching.
Correct.
Just saying. I'm just saying. Right. Just putting it out there.
So, but I'm also not, I mean, there's a lot of folks I mean, it's been well written about from the last campaign and the Republicans that switched over and supported Biden. And that was impactful. And I think there are a lot of people that just want the Republican Party to return to something that's principled and that, has some sort of slate of policy that we want to accomplish, which isn't just blindly following one like really unkind, unqualified human.
Yeah, I was listening to somebody, trying to think of who it was I was listening to the other day. So I had to go pick up Isaiah from my parents. He spent the week with my parents. And so I listen to podcasts when I drive so I can stay awake and stay focused and whatever. Especially driving down I-75, when there's nothing but cows and John Morgan billboards. And the Adam Putnam billboard is still there, by the way.
I saw a picture of Putnam somewhere. Yes, I don't know who posted it, but it was like Putnam holding somebody's baby. And I was like, oh, I miss the days of Adam
Could have
Putnam.
been a contender.
He could have been a contender, right? Like, I saw it, just made me like, it feels old to even say it. Like, remember when that was when Adam Putnam was a thing, and he was the heir apparent, and obviously not, and that's okay. That's not a judgment on anybody.
No, it is what it is.
But it made me think of like older times when we were all young and innocent. But anyway,
what I was thinking was the commenter, and I can't remember who it was, said the former president basically greenlit the end of civility. Essentially,
yes, 100%.
He made it okay. He made it acceptable to be uncivil to each other. And that's been sticking in my head because you see this with all the mask nonsense, and you see this with, so we were in Ocala yesterday picking up Isaiah, and my parents don't live in Ocala because they're real people, but we were meeting them in Ocala.
How many horses do they own, Jacob?
Yeah, exactly. But we were meeting them in Ocala, and we were eating lunch, Panda Express. And I was struck because two people walk in the door behind us, and they're both dressed in military garb. And you know what I mean when I say this, the camo jacket, the I served hat. She's got the same kind of stuff on. And I'm not stereotyping. I'm just painting a picture here. And neither one of them was wearing a mask. In Ocala, shocking. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. Like, and the lady behind the counter yells out, "Ma'am, sir, you need to put a mask on." And they like blah blah blah, and turn around and storm out and like throw this hissy fit. And I was like, okay. First off, you gotta wear a damn mask. Like,
there's probably a sign on the door.
There's a big sign on the door. Okay. I know you had to pass a reading test to get into the army. Like, I know you probably can read the English language. Secondly, we've been doing this for a year. Like, we didn't just start doing this last week. We've been doing this for a year, which tells me you're doing this on purpose. And like, okay, I have gotten out of the car before and forgotten a mask and walked into somewhere. Like, we've all done it.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't an asshole. Sorry, Josh. I wasn't a jerk when I did it. Because I'm an adult, I turned around, I walked out to my car.
Here's an idea.
Got a mask and walked back inside. And I feel like what we have done, and this is totally not at all what we were going to, but as I told you before, I don't plan topics. We just talk. I feel like the last 4 years, we have greenlit this idea that anybody can be a jerk to anybody they want to be, and it's perfectly acceptable. Like, I remember, I mean, listen, I'm OG Never Trump. You know this. We've had this conversation, like,
Yeah.
Actually, Curtis, they were your age, Curtis. They were your age. By the way, you can see his picture. I have more hair than Curtis does, so just gonna point that out. But
I'm staying out of family matters. Drink my old fashioned.
So I remember 2016 campaign that I worked on that I'm not going to name, and we had. You may know this. You probably know this. So when you're doing congressional races, which is primarily my background, dude, you were like, Curtis, you're like 20 years younger than me, and you're bald. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, we had Congressman. This is funny. This is a true story. We had Congressman Doug Collins with us for the day. So what they do is they send members down, and the members sort of, and I know you know this, but for the two people who are watching, they send members down, and the members, they take the candidate out to dinner, and they help them raise money, and they make appearances, and maybe they get on the news. And we had a couple of them, but Doug was the one I remember.
Is what we call them.
Yeah. So we had Doug, and I remember because Doug A is taller than me. So for the folks at home, Doug Collins is like 6'7". All right. So B, because the candidate I was working for had difficulties getting in and out of a car, and we're not going to give him any airtime. He rode in the front seat of my car, which meant Doug had to sit in the back seat. So Doug was sitting behind me in my little Saturn, true story, and telling stories. So Doug represented North Georgia, basically literally represented where they filmed Deliverance. Like, not even an exaggeration, it's a true story. That lake where they filmed Deliverance is actually Doug's district. Literally not joking. Listen, this is why you work in politics, because we have the best stories. Like, the pay sucks, the working conditions suck, everybody treats you like crap, but we have the best stories. So
the teams are great. The teams
are great for the most part. So
for the most part, accurate.
What I remember is Doug A telling me Trump jokes, Donald Trump jokes all day, which is ironic. People who know Doug Collins and know what he spent the last 4 years doing basically spent the entire day telling the candidate and I jokes about Donald Trump. And B, everywhere we went, people were pissed off. Like, we spent the entire day going from, we were going to the supervisor of elections offices in the district because it was early voting and people are lined up. You know this, but for folks at home. And the candidate would go walk the line and say hi to people, and then we do media and that kind of stuff. And Doug was with us, and Doug and I would be standing behind the camera. I don't know why I'm talking with my hands, but sitting behind the camera, talking. And people would have the Hillary with their skin melting off with her laugh, and lock her up t-shirts.
Yeah.
And it was like the craziest nonsense that I've ever seen, it to the point where, and I'm not small and I'm not easily intimidated. Or I would say, look, we're getting out of here. Like, we're out of here. Like, I'm not putting up with this crap. I'm not going to have you around this nonsense. I don't want you on camera with this nonsense. I remember we had one incident where we were doing a live stand-up for the 5 o'clock news. And this is in Palm Beach County. Remember this very clearly. We're at the Palm Beach County Supervisor of Elections. Marco was there. Marco had just done a stand-up because we were kind of shadowing Marco for that day. And Doug and I were standing, and some guy comes walking up with his son or brother or husband or whatever he was, and they had this giant 20-foot banner. And all I can remember was it was sort of like there were pictures of the men who died in Benghazi on it. There was the cackling Hillary face. There was, that's all I kind of remember. And they were trying to get in the background of Brian's live stand-up. And I walk over to the guy and I go, hey, now I'm not subtle, you know this. And I'm like, hey, no. He's like, what? I'm like, you're not going over there. Like, what are you doing? He's like, we want to help. And I go, I'm not going to tell you everything I said to him, but
actually what you said.
Part I said to him was, you honestly think putting that banner on the live news behind this particular candidate that's going to be seen all over the entire district, by the way, is going to help? Like, just can you possibly walk me through your thought process? And he just like stands there and looks at me. And Doug Collins, who again is standing behind me in a Navy suit and red tie and the uniform, 2 inches taller than me, says in the Georgia drawl, hey, sir, you might want to back up this way. And that's all it took. But like I've never gotten that out of my head, because this idea that politics is now, I hate my opponent and I want to destroy my opponent and I hate you and I hate, like, I don't understand that mentality. And I'm as competitive. I was a competitive athlete my whole life.
Oh, yeah.
I'm as competitive as anybody. But I've never wanted to destroy my opponent. Like, if I wanted to embarrass opponents, yeah. I mean, I wanted to, that, like, I've run campaigns against guys who allegedly beat their wives. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
I mean, yeah, you want to embarrass those guys.
Yes.
You
want to win against those guys, right? You want to beat those guys. You don't want them to have flaming bricks thrown through their window, right? It's that, and I hate. Oh. No. This is so. I just thought about this. So, I will tread very carefully here, and my legal team might be texting me here in a second. Perfect. I will tell you that our 2016 campaign, we had the most interesting oppo file I've ever seen in my entire career. I feel like there should be you should do one of these and invite, like, I think it said like up to 10 people can be in these, and everybody bring their best oppo file stories.
Best oppo stories? Yeah,
because I have some oppo stories that it's like, and like when like the opponent starts like popping off at some debate, and then you're like, if you knew what I knew, you would be so nice to my candidate right now.
Yes.
I think that should be a follow-up, or like maybe a year-end celebration. We can all wear Christmas hats. I don't know. But I feel like this needs to, like the oppo, maybe like, I don't know. We need oppo October. I don't know. Something needs to happen.
I still have the file. I have the binder somewhere. And all I'm going to tell you, because I don't want to get sued, that it was the most interesting, not that I can't verify all of it, obviously, it's all documented, but
sure,
the most interesting and entertaining oppo file I've ever seen. And that's saying something, because I've run a lot of races. And so at one point I get a phone call from NRCC guys who, as I sort of jokingly tell people, the reason why NRCC exists is so that when you get fired from Walmart, you can still get a job at NRCC. Like it's the bottom barrel of campaign work. And none of these guys have ever actually worked at a campaign before, ever. Like in their lives. I don't think they've ever run a school president. Like they know, I know more about nuclear fusion than these guys know about running a campaign. Okay. And so I get a call and they're like,
I'm not commenting.
That's fine. I'll take the heat for you. So I get a call and it's a conference call and it's myself and my colleague, my partner, and a couple other people. And they're like, we know you have all this oppo. Like we've heard some of it. We've seen some of it. Like, why are you not using it? I said, well, look, I don't know if y'all have seen the tracking poll, but I mean, this is like 2 weeks out, right? I think we were up between 8 and 9, somewhere in that range. And I go, in this district, that's a landslide. Like this race is all like we're having lunch with Burt Reynolds tomorrow. Like we're basically shutting down. Like we're pretty much hanging out. We're drinking beers. Like this campaign.
That story needs its own episode too. But carry on.
I may have to bring you back just to help you prompt me to tell that story.
I would love to facilitate that episode of Monticello Live. Like I would love to do that. It's epic. It's one of my favorite stories of all time.
It's my only really good campaign story. Like literally my only.
That's not true, but it is really good.
But they were like, "Why are you not using this stuff?" And I go, "I don't have to.
You don't need it.
Like I don't have to." And I said, "I don't know that you guys understand that I'm not running to get my guy elected in 2016. I'm running to get my guy reelected in 2020. Like I'm trying to build a base for him. I'm trying to build a foundation for him. And you don't do it by being a nasty campaigner. You do it by running funny videos and waving the flag and going to events and going to VFW halls and walking on Avenue D in Fort Pierce. And like you don't do it by destroying the guy.
You're building a brand.
And they never understood that. And I got grief for that. To this day, I actually still get grief for that. And the person we were running against was kind of a known public figure in Florida. Like people in Florida know who I'm talking about. And it was a fairly prominent person. And there was no reason to like destroy the guy. Mm-hmm. And I could have ended the guy. Like I don't mind saying this.
Yeah. And I think it's one of the things that like as a campaign manager, like it's almost like filmmaking, like the editing is so important, but the stuff that ends up on the cutting room floor is beautiful. And you may never like, you get it in your hands and you're like, oh, this is amazing. I hope we never have to use it because it's awful. But the stuff that you leave behind and that you edit out is breathtaking. But you shouldn't, I don't believe in negative campaigning. It's again something that limited not only the candidates with whom I worked, but also the consultants that I decided to pick up to help with races that I ran. All to say, we need an Oppo file episode of this program where everybody brings, and we can like redact.
I may have to have like my lawyer as one of the
literal binders of information.
Yes.
And you just pick your best one and bring it to the table. And I think that would be very compelling.
So it'll be like 9 of us and then my lawyer in the corner, and he'll just be like,
there would be 9 of, and your lawyer rocking back and forth in the corner. Can't help that.
Oh my God.
But it would be fantastic.
Cool. So, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten in politics? That's G-rated.
I'm gonna, and I've said it a few times, and if anybody ever wonders how much of a McCain person I am, it's to always work to serve a cause greater than yourself. And that will keep you out of trouble with whom you choose to align yourself 90% of the time. Because for those who haven't worked on campaigns before, out of the 5 of you watching, they are, I always describe it as a cave, and you go into this cave, and this is on a national level, but it certainly could also be said on a state or local level. You work so hard and you go into this cave, and while you're in that cave, you meet the most amazing people and you work with the most amazing teams, and it's really hard work. But when you come out of that cave, people have gotten married, people have gotten divorced, people have had babies, people have passed away, and the whole world has moved on without you. And it's been a year and a half, especially again at the national level. Like, it's been a year and a half since you saw real life. Like, I speak to my parents legitimately almost every day, and I was lucky if I got to talk to them once a week during McCain and during Romney. And the point of all that is if you're going to go in that cave, do it for someone with whom you align and with whom you believe in. Because I think that in politics, it's not like just like you're taking a job, right? And you're counting on the CEO not to be a jerk and not to make all these terrible decisions. You are attaching yourself to a person, and that person is not going to be perfect and might stumble from time to time, but you want that stumble to be that he may have voted against the way the rest of the party did at some point, or something that at least aligns with a principled approach to governing, not that he was caught having an extramarital affair with 2 other members of the legislature or whatever it might be. Right. And so I think that it's ensuring that you are serving a cause greater and finding what that is and what that means to you. And if you can find that in politics, more power to you. It's not easy. It means that you'll work with less people. I have what I call a train track rule because of that cave thing, that I would never run a campaign for someone I wouldn't lay on train tracks for, because it has to be, it again meant that I worked with a lot less people, a lot less candidates, and then continue to work with them as elected officials. But if you're going to take my time and you're going to take time away from me being with my parents and my brother and my nieces and my sister-in-law and my friends and all of that thing, it's like you're earning my time. You're going to be someone who is out there driving good policy and bringing people to the table and not always voting along party lines, and being someone that I could believe in and be proud to serve with and for. So I think that everybody, all the others, the guys who know what they want to be, the guys that want to wear the pin and get recognized in the either Capitol, those are a dime a dozen. Find that other guy. That's probably the best piece of advice that started with the way Senator McCain governed his whole life, and how I've applied that to mine.
Dang, that was good. That was a better answer than I was expecting.
You thought it was going to be like, always get the room close to the elevator, right? Always carry gaff tape. Yes. Always carry gaff tape, y'all. Black and white. It's very important.
Carry every type of USB cable in your pocket.
Yeah, have a like a zippy bag full of every kind of like dongle known to man. All of those things are true. Carry some like translucent powder for your guy has to go on like camera last minute. Be able to find multiple fight guy in a hotel lobby. This is what we call tying the boat at the beginning of the conversation. All of those things are true.
And if your guy uses prosthetics, make sure you've got a spare set of prosthetics in the trunk. That's always important.
I am not touching that. With a 10-foot
true story.
Anything.
It's one of the things that you learn. Um, and a cane, an extra cane, because
I'm gonna need a follow-up cocktail.
It ain't like he's watching, so like, what do I care?
That's valid.
That's so funny. All right, I'm getting yelled at. Like, I've actually gotten 2 texts. You got to tell the Burt Reynolds story. You got to tell the Burt Reynolds story. So, should we tell the Burt Reynolds
here's
story?
the question. I want to hear the Burt Reynolds story, but are we going to tell it now, or are we having a separate episode? It's up to you. If you're going to tell it now, I need you to let me be able to make another old fashioned on the side while it's happening. It's so good, y'all. If you're still on and you have the time, if this is about to happen,
let's do it.
Pour a glass of red wine, pull up a chair. You're in for a treat. I am going to mute myself real quick because I'm legit going to make an old fashioned. It's right here, though. I prepped it all on the side table.
That is so awesome.
Because I'm an advanced person. All right, carry on.
That's right. You may already be the best guest ever. Okay, so I won't name the candidate, and I think I'm going to try to get through this whole story without naming a candidate. So, so for people who don't know at home, and this is for the 2 people who are watching, and see, I'm already getting questions now. I'm actually getting text message questions now about
what kind of questions?
I'm about to tell. We'll see if I answer them. So
I'm going to go back.
So we lived. So people who don't know, before we moved to Tallahassee, my wife and I lived in Martin County for 10 years. My family's all there. My parents are there. My grandmother's buried there. It was a family thing. You don't move to Martin County, Florida to work in politics. Trust me. Excuse me. So for people who don't know, Burt lived in Jupiter, which is actually on the border of Martin County and Palm Beach. In fact, his house was actually right on essentially the county line between Martin and Palm Beach counties. So it's kind of a thing that he would be out and about. You would see him, in the community every once in a while, or, he had like a favorite, Italian restaurant or that kind of stuff. And he was always very personable and sort of the kind of guy who you would see out and about. And if you're my age, and again, because I'm significantly older than Jen, you grew up when Burt was Smoking the Bandit and sort of that time frame where I had a Smoking the Bandit playset and, all
Cannonball Run, one of the best movies ever.
Absolutely. So, so fast forward to 2016, and I come in the office one day, and I get from our assistant, who doesn't speak to me any longer because I'm not enamored with Donald Trump. Hands me a piece of paper, and you have phone messages, right? And I look on there, and it says, I swear to God, it says Burt Reynolds, and I went, what? And she starts giggling. She's like, Burt Reynolds called. And I'm like, Burt Reynolds? You can see when I get confused, I repeat.
Rooney?
Yeah. And she starts laughing. She goes, yeah, they want you to call back. I'm like, all right. So I call. And of course, and I'm scared shitless, right? Like I'm thinking I'm going to talk to the bandit. Like I'm picking the phone and I'm going to get the bandit on the phone, right? Because I don't know how this stuff works. I'm not a celebrity guy. And of course I don't. I get his driver, his security guard or whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, Mr. Reynolds wants to meet the candidate. I was kind of hoping that you guys could, I know you're extremely busy, but maybe you guys can find some time. You could have coffee or something. I'm yeah, we got the time. Like, we're good. Like, right? Like, there's a reason why you got a 9.8.
We're at your leisure.
Yeah, it's Burt Reynolds. We got time. So he's like, oh, perfect. He's going to be so excited. I'm like, he's going to be excited. Okay. So I go back in the office. It's a true story. The candidate may deny this, but this is my story. He can come on and tell it if he wants to. I go in and I go, hey, guess what? He looks up at me. I go, we're going to have lunch with Burt Reynolds. And he just looks at me and goes, why do I care about that? And I go, maybe I accidentally slipped into German when I said that. So let me try this in English. We, because I sure as hell am going with you, so this is going to be we, are going to go have lunch with Burt Reynolds. He's like, well, we don't really have time for that. Like, and I go, yeah, we do. Like, I keep your schedule. Like, I literally keep your schedule. Like, I'm telling you, I am putting 2 hours on there for us to go have lunch with Burt Reynolds. All right, whatever, man. Goes back to his phone. So I'm like, listen. So I looked at him and I go, we're going to do this because you're going to do this for me. Like, screw it. I don't care you. Like, you're going to do this for me. Like, you ain't paying me anything. Like, you treat me like dog shit. Like, I'm going to go meet Burt Reynolds. All right, man, whatever. So, of course, I call back. I put it on the schedule. So they, and I know, if you live in Southern Martin County, Northern Palm Beach County, everybody knows where Burt lived. Like, it wasn't like a big secret, okay? It was the giant yellow mansion on the ocean. Right off US 1. Literally 5 minutes from my house. I could have walked to his house from my house. So we get there, and it was lunch. And I'm scared to death. And I don't care about celebrities. Like, I couldn't tell you who half of them are anyway. But, like, I was legit scared to death. I was like, I'm going to say something stupid. I'm going to,
Fangirl.
Oh, yeah. Like, I know I'm going to do something dumb. Like, I guarantee you, right? So we get in the car. We drive down there. You pull up to the gate. Security guy's there. So he's on a golf cart. He's like, yeah, come on, follow me. So you're on the grounds of Burt's estate. And the guy's in a golf cart. And I'm following him, and he pulls into this giant hacienda. Like this giant yellow, I'll never forget this as long as I live. Got to be 6,000-7,000 square feet. Like 3-car garage right here. I'm trying to paint this picture. Like, my house would fit in 2 of his garages. Like, it was just this. And I was like, so we get out of the car, and I'm like, I can't help it. I'm like, damn, Bert's got a hell of a nice house. Security guy, his name's Jim. I'm still in contact with him to this day, by the way. Looks at me
Jim.
And deadpans and says, I have the best friends. Looks at me and deadpans and goes, oh, this isn't Bert's house. This is his office and his recreation room. And I go, okay. So you go in and you walk in through this door, and on the left is this literally like 4,000 square foot open space, and it's piled with boxes. It's like
of money.
And I'm like, no. I'm looking and I'm like, is he moving? Because I say stupid things, right? I just like I'm at Burt Reynolds' house. And Jim goes, no, that's his movie memorabilia. Oh, okay. So you go in and you walk in through this plush office, huge, his office, his assistant, his accountant. Like, I'm not even joking. And then you go in this door and there's this gigantic, like, airplane hangar size room. Okay. And it's oak paneling on all the walls. And there's a bar. There's a full bar. Like a full bar. Like, not like a house
bar.
Yeah, like he bought a bar and moved it to his house. All along this one wall, the mirror glass behind it, every liquor that's ever been bottled in the history of mankind. There's this gigantic...
Like a campaign office, but with good liquor.
and no panties on the floor. Oh, sorry. I didn't say that out loud.
It's different. I hope my niece isn't watching anymore, but it's fine.
I really shouldn't have said that anyway.
That's not how politics works.
No, it's not at all. Not at all. And there's this huge, like, Cadillac size pool table, custom built pool table in the middle of the room. And then the walls, there's these, big overstuffed leather couches all the way around the walls. And you look at the walls and they're covered with Like, name a movie star, and I mean movie star. I don't mean like some dude that was in a movie. I mean like Cary Grant, movie, and Cary Grant was one of them, by the way. Their photo is on the wall, and it's signed.
Like that place in New York. What is that place that's got like all the people on the wall?
Or like the steakhouse, whatever.
Yeah. Or like when you go to the Palm or whatever,
That's
and they
what
have
it is.
the local people. Yeah.
Marilyn Monroe, Cary Grant. I don't care. Name the biggest stars you can think of. There's a Dear Bert, love you. Dear Bert, loved working.
Well, we know Sally Fields was there.
Oh, we're gonna get to that. So, I mean, Bert's dead. He can't sue me. So, sorry, Bert. Rip. So, that's what my son says. My son doesn't say R.I.P. He says rip. I'm standing there just looking at the walls, right? Because I'm like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And the candidate is on his phone. Just like, can't be bothered. This is stupid. Why am I here? And then I hear a sound, then I turn around. And coming through the doorway is Burt freaking Reynolds. And I'm like 5 feet away. Now, keep in mind, Burt was 80, right? I don't know. Hunched over, had a cane. Wasn't looking great, but he's Burt. And he's looking at you. And he's Burt. He's got the sunglasses.
Freaking Reynolds.
It's Burt Reynolds. And he walks up. You know, as I always do, I step back, right? Because I'm not the reason why we're here. So I take a step back. So to make sure the candidate is front and center. And he walks up to the candidate. Hey, I'm Burt Reynolds. You know, and then he comes and he walks back. He walks up to me. Hey, how are you? Thanks for coming. I'm Burt Reynolds. And of course I say what every stupid thing you can think of, which was, yeah, I know. Nice to meet you, Mr. Reynolds. Like,
you did better than I. Honestly, I would have been like, Cannonball Run.
Right. So Burt has
Captain America, like dude, Dom DeLuise. Like I wouldn't have done it. By the way, I want to say for those attending at home, this is the first time I've heard this live, and I'm very excited about it.
Oh, it gets better. It gets way better.
I've really only like read this story, and hang on, because it is epic.
So Burt has this private table, this round wooden table. There's like these 5 throne like seats, high back throne seats sitting around. And so we sit down, myself, the candidate, Burt, Jim, the security guy, and then Burt's assistant had laid out, and I shit you not, sorry. You're
fine, the kids are sleeping. It's almost 10.
I hope so. The custom pool table, which is bigger than a Cadillac, is covered with food. Covered with food.
What did you eat?
Sliced roast beef, ham, cold cuts, burgers. I mean,
there's a political lesson. Anybody hoping to get into politics, if there's food, grab a thing. You're going to probably go like sit or kneel on the wall of a ballroom or something. Grab something to eat while you can. Throw a roll in your purse. You're going to need it. Carry on.
Thank you. No, thank you. So I can get my food, and I go sit on the couch. Because again, I'm not the one. He doesn't care about me. Like, I'm not there to meet him. He's there to meet the candidate, who of course has no interest in meeting him. So I go sit on the couch. I swear to God, I go sit down, and I'm like 5, 6 feet away, whatever. Burt leans over and goes, "Jacob, what are you doing?" Like, sorry, Mr. Reynolds. Like, you know,
eating this ham sandwich.
I'm eating, right? So we sit down, we're eating. He's telling stories. I don't feel comfortable sharing most of the stories. They're some good stories. So
Burt Reynolds, what I've learned today is Burt Reynolds is your John McCain.
Yes. He so what I found out was, and I didn't know this, was that his father, Burt's father, had been in the Army. And actually, I believe, was on Omaha Beach, either on D-Day or D-Day +1 or something along. We got a shout out from a fan.
Dude, Michael Williams and I have been through the stuff together.
I know. I've heard a few of the stories.
That one You know, like you have those like less like there's campaigns and they're all not glamorous, and then there's like those campaigns that are really not glamorous where the candidates spend their time putting M&Ms into different colored bowls based upon their color because you combined them and that particular candidate had a problem with it prior to their kickoff. That's the campaign Michael and I worked on together. Carry on.
Yeah, but Michael doesn't have a Burt Reynolds story.
No, he doesn't. Carry on. We have a whole thing. There's like a video of us throwing like an old muffin against a wall.
I feel like I've heard this
story. Every year.
No,
it's fantastic. It's not Burt Reynolds though. I don't want to interrupt. This is gold.
No, you're fine.
Proceed.
So what I learned was that Burt has a special affinity for the Army in particular. And my candidate, of course, had been in the Army. And even though he didn't really give a damn about meeting Burt and about Burt's dad or whatever. And so we spend probably 2 hours just hearing Burt tell Hollywood stories. And I mean Hollywood stories. I mean like what made Marilyn Monroe a star, you know, like things that like you never could. I can't tell some of these things on air. Probably can't tell it,
sure.
Quite honestly. But like just blew my mind. And so we get up to go, and Burt hands the candidate one of these, it's a bag, and inside of it was one of those giant coffee table books. And you know what I mean? Like those long, and it was a leather covered history of the United States Army. That's what it was.
That's
and
sweet.
So as I take it, I open it a little bit and I see that Burt, and I don't know why I'm doing this, but Burt has inscribed the inside of the front cover to candidate. And literally, and it wasn't just love Burt Reynolds. It was like a note to the candidate, like a personal handwritten note to the candidate. And I about lost my mind. I was like, this might be the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Me, second to holding my son 10 seconds after he was born. This is the second
and marrying your wife
I've ever held in my hands. Like
there we go.
Like,
okay.
I'm trying to save this and bringing it back. So we get in the car, and I'm like, look, dude, I cleared the day. So like, I'll drop you off at home. Like, I got shit I got to do. We got to pick up some checks. I got to do whatever. But like, I don't know that I can go work after this. Like,
spent.
Right? He's like, yeah, whatever, blah, 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 on his phone. So I drop him off. I go home. I'm like losing my mind. And I'm telling everybody the story. I call my mom, and I'm telling because I don't want to forget like this day, right? So I'm trying to tell people while it's fresh. So we go on. And so they're, they called me like the next day, and they were like, yeah, I don't think I've ever told anybody this. They're like, Burt really wants to do a commercial for the candidate. I was like, we could probably do that. Like, I don't know if we have the money, but we could figure something out.
Call RPO, call NRC, whoever.
Yeah. But it was like a week before the election. It was like, I mean, I should have done like a Facebook Live with him or something, but I was just like, yeah, I don't want to bother Burt. We'll get him the next time around. Of course, like he's busy, whatever. So, you go win the race, and I'm like, man, this is cool. We're getting ready to move to Tallahassee. So I get a phone call. I don't know, it was a week. It may have been a week or two after Election Day. I get a phone call from Security Jim. He's like, hey, Jacob, congratulations. It was a great race. He goes, I just want to give you, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're busy. I'm like, dude, my job ended on Election Day. Like, I got nothing to do. Like, I went to the beach today. He's like,
being on the campaign side, not the administration side.
Yeah.
So, carry on.
He goes, Mr. Reynolds wants to invite you to his holiday party. Now, when I heard him say this is absolutely true. And you know this, when people call and say that to you, they don't mean you. They mean the royal you.
Right.
Right?
The we of it all.
Correct. And I'm like, yeah,
we want to have you over.
Correct. It ain't me. You know, maybe I'll drive him or something, right? And I go, yeah, you know, let me check on his schedule. You know, I know he's got to go orientation in DC, a couple things going on. I know he's spending some time with his family. And Jim goes, no, 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 no. He's like, we don't really care about him. Like you specifically are invited
to Burt Reynolds' holiday party.
I was like, okay, I probably can make that. Like,
let me check my schedule. No, I'm fine.
Let me check my schedule. I probably can make.
And then let me clear my schedule. I'm coming. I'm there. I don't need a +1. I'll just be there, sitting in the corner watching.
Oh, you just touched. You just touched a sore subject, but we'll get to that here in a second. So,
I'm sorry if Mrs. Perry can hear me.
I did make one colossal boo-boo in this whole thing, but we'll get to that. So the day arrives, and I roll up to Bert's estate, and security Jim is out there in the golf cart. He's like, Jacob, great to see you. Come on in, you know, blah, blah, blah. I literally have a preferred parking spot, like right in front of, and there's like 20.
You're the employee of the month.
Yeah, exactly, right? There's like 20 or 30 cars parked over. In fact, they have a shuttle running from the church. There's a church next door to Bert's house. And they're running a shuttle, but I wasn't parked in the church parking lot. I was parked in front of Bert's house, okay?
The hacienda.
Correct. Although, yeah, the rec room and whatever the hell it was. So I go inside. There's probably 30 people in there, and it's like it's the Mar-a-Lago crowd, and you know what I mean. It's the older pastel color, you know, wearing older people, baubles. Totally not my people, but I'm cool. I've been on campaigns long enough. I can work with pretty much anything. I go in there. I say hi to a few people, but I'm clearly out of place. For one, I'm 30 years younger than everybody there.
If you were a fundraiser, you would have been in heaven.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'd have raised $1 million.
That's why I don't fundraise. This is why I don't fundraise.
I'd have raised $1 million.
I'm going to mute again because I'm making another old fashioned. Carry on.
I wish I'd brought one in with me. So
I literally put it on a small side table next to me.
Alexis is well, I'm glad I had you on. So I do the same thing, and they've got a spread on the bar. And then they've got another spread on the pool table. There's a bartender, and there's servers walking around, you know, giving you drinks and whatever, anything you want. Of course, I get water because I'm still like in campaign mode, right? So that's one of my rules. When you're on the clock, you drink water. It's one of my campaign rules.
It's a very good rule for any newbies still hanging on, like the 6 people 100%. Watching still. Don't drink water. When the candidate goes in the suite and you're into downtime time, fine. Everything until then is club soda or water. Carry on, G.
So I do my normal thing, right? I go get my stuff and I go sit on one of the overstuffed couches, and like my head is touching Marilyn Monroe. Like it's the closest I'll ever get to, like, literally she's like right behind me. And you know, people are really friendly. Like they come, you know, clearly like they all kind of know each other. It's Burton Circle. And I'm the stranger. So they're like, what the hell are you doing here? So I tell them, yeah, I just work for so-and-so. They're like, oh, we love him. We voted for him. It's so great, you know? And I'm kind of like a minor celebrity, which is weird because you know this. You work on campaigns. Nobody gives a shit about who you are. And they're not supposed to. Your job is to make sure.
No. You don't want them to. Right. You're the guy behind the guy for a reason.
Listen, I'm not gonna say that I wasn't enjoying it. It was kind of weird. But it was like,
if I was at Burt Reynolds' house, I'd want to be the guy in front. Like, that's, yeah, no. Okay, every other world, you're like, don't pay attention to me. But in this world, kind of cool.
So I'm sitting here and I'm eating whatever the hell I'm eating, and I had something. I don't even know what I had to drink. It was water. It was water. It was water, actually. And then Bert comes in with his assistant and a couple friends, and I'm sitting like over in the corner, like I'm on the opposite side of the room, and it's a big room. It's like small hotel bar room size, right? So think about that. And I don't even get up because I'm like, listen, I'm just happy to be here. Like, this is freaking amazing. I'm in the same room as Bert. I'm talking to nice people. Like, I'm gonna eat my stuff and jet. Like, I'm not even gonna. It's just how I am, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm eating my stuff and I'm talking or whatever, and then this lady comes up to me, taps me on the shoulder. She goes, Mr. Perry. Now Bert has gone and sat over at his table over in the corner, right? With this, and I found out later it's he's there, his childhood friend from elementary school, his agent, his personal assistant, and somebody else are sitting at this table. So that's the crowd we're talking about. Like it's his
core, like his core group.
It's his inner circle. Lady goes, Mr. Perry? So yes, ma'am. She goes, Mr. Reynolds is asking for you. I said, excuse me?
You're like, asking for me to what? Leave? Get him a sandwich? Like,
right. He saw you. It was like, get the hell out of here. What is that asshole doing here? And I'm like,
I invited his boss.
That's what I said. I was like, wait a second. I go, I just got caught, didn't I? I just busted into this party. I'm not supposed to be here. Clearly, I'm not the candidate because I'm a foot taller and I have both of my legs. So he knows I'm not the candidate. So like, I'm like, oh shit. Like, well,
by the way, for anybody following along at home, just real quickly, if that comment about who doesn't pay attention at Burt Reynolds' house because he's on his phone doesn't like give you an, oh yeah, that checks moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You need to read more. You need to read the Wall Street Journal or I don't know, the Hill, something. Anyway, carry on, Jacob. This is where it gets good, y'all. If you're thinking about like, hey, it's getting late. It's like Sunday at 9:52. I don't have anything left in this bottle of wine. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to bounce. Now's not the time. Buckle down. It's about to get real. Carry on.
So I go, okay. And she said, no. She goes, he saved a seat for you at his table. And I'm actually getting a little emotional. I was like, what? And she's like, he's been waiting for you. There's like 50 people there.
He said that about like you and two women his entire life. This is a total compliment.
So I like look over, like there's two women sitting next to me, and I'm like, I don't even know what to do. And like the one lady goes, go! Like, what are you doing?
Run towards the table.
Go! So I get up. Oh my God. I get up and I walk over.
I love this so much right now.
And I walk over, and as I'm walking over, I realized that not only did he save a seat for me at his table, it was the seat next to him at his table. So I'm kind of like, I don't really know what to do here because I'm just a campaign guy. Like I'm nobody. Like I'm just a guy who does this shit, right? And so I walk up.
Just as a campaign person, how you should see yourself. Just
so
it's a true story. Like, yeah.
No, it's kind of how I'm wired, and it's how I see the job. So as I'm walking up, he looks up at me and he says, Jacob, where were you? I said, Mr. Reynolds, thanks for inviting me. Like, I didn't know what to say, right? Like, I was kind of like, I thought he was going to beat my ass. I mean, he's like 80 years old. He's Burt Reynolds. Like, I don't know. He probably could still kill me. So I sit down and he introduces me to everybody at the table. And again, it was his childhood best friend and his agent and et cetera, et cetera. And they all call him Buddy, by the way. That was his nickname with this circle. They all called him Buddy. And they couldn't have been nicer to me. Like, it wasn't like they couldn't have been nicer. Like, hey, how's it going, Jacob? I'm glad you came out. You know, I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, what is it that I'm doing here? And I'm literally sitting, because he didn't have the greatest hearing, I'm literally sitting so close to Burt Reynolds that my left knee is touching his right knee. Like, that's how close I'm sitting to Burt Reynolds. And I'm sort of surreptitiously texting, including Josh, who, if he's still watching, he may remember this. I'm texting a couple of my friends, and I'm kind of like, hey, what are you doing tonight? Actually, I know I did this to Josh. Hey, what are you doing tonight? Oh, I'm at home having dinner. Oh, I'm having dinner with Burt Reynolds.
At his house.
And I'm trying to figure out how to take a picture, like a selfie, but I'm scared to death I'm going to get thrown out. So I'm like, can I like sneak it? Like, you know. So I didn't do that. And so I spend like an hour. Having Burt Reynolds tell me, Josh is texting me. I remember that. No, it's a true story. I spend like an hour, and they're passing, like they're taking pictures off of the wall and handing them. People would come over and take a picture off the wall and say, Burt, what was this? It's like, oh, this is in 1958 when I was on this play in Broadway, and I don't know what the hell. Like, I don't know all this stuff, right? And I will tell you this. One thing I do remember is that there was like a side table right next to Burt. And he had a picture of was it Dinah Shore that he was romantically with? Was a
I mean, there was a lot of
women but she was like
affiliated with, but yes, like Dinah Shore, Sally Field, there were like some like key ones in there.
It was Dinah Shore. It's a picture of Dinah Shore on the side table sitting right next to him. And there was like, there's like a picture of him playing football in high school, and it's him and Joey sitting right here in like 1942 or whatever it was, right? And so I'm like, listen, I know for a fact I am never going to see Burt Reynolds again. Like, I know that this is a once in a lifetime deal. I'm never going to see him again. I'm gonna live this, whatever it is that I have. So I'm like thinking I can ask him anything I want. Like, it's Burt frickin' Reynolds, right? So I'm like, so Burt, like, no, I'm Mr. Reynolds. I didn't say Burt because I'm not that stupid.
Burt.
Yeah, I know, right? He'd probably backhand me. Shut up, kid.
You know why? Because he could. Burt frickin' Reynolds.
Exactly. So, Mr. Reynolds, how did you end up at Florida State?
Great question.
So he smiles. Still the Burt Reynolds smile. He goes, well, I was a high school football player, and I was all set to go to Miami. My dad wanted me to go. His dad had been the police chief at Jupiter, Florida, after he came back from the Army. And he's like, my dad wanted me to go to the University of Miami to play football, and they had given me a scholarship, and I accepted it. And he said, my best friend was it Dick Hauser, who was a Major League Baseball manager, Royals, like in the 70s and 80s, whatever. Told me to come up to Florida State. And he's like, you need to come up here. You need to check it out before you go to Miami. At least come up, spend the weekend with me, whatever. So he says to me, and obviously I'm paraphrasing, he says to me, so I get up there for the weekend, and he goes, the first thing I noticed, he goes, Dickie, he calls him Dickie. Dickie and I are walking around, and we're basically the only two men walking around the campus. I'm like, yeah, that probably sucked, right?
That checks.
Yeah. And he chuckles, and he goes, so I go in to meet with the football coach, and he says, coach is like, oh, Reynolds, we want you to come play football here. You don't want to play at Miami, blah, blah, blah. And coach says, Burt says to me, Mr. Reynolds says to me, I still can't call him Burt. Mr. Reynolds says to me, so I asked the coach, why are there so many women on campus? And coach looks at him and goes, well, up until this year, this was the Florida State College for women. So this is the first year that we're co-ed. And there's like a 7-to-1 male to female ratio on the campus.
I'm covering my eyes because I feel like this breeds into why Tallahassee is the way that it is on the legislative side. But I'm going to keep those comments for maybe another time. Carry on.
Or why the state capitol is still in Tallahassee. Yeah.
Oh my God. The bubble is not a good thing. Unless you're legislators, and then it's fantastic for you.
Mr. Reynolds looks at me and goes, I looked at Coach Denny Dine and goes, Coach, I think I'm coming to Florida State University. Now listen, I have no idea how true any of this stuff is, but what I will tell you, and this is one thing,
it tracks though.
Oh, he totally does. One thing he said to me later on was, I said something about what's the secret to acting, and because it's got to be more than just pretending to be somebody else. He's like, anybody can pretend to be somebody else. He said a good actor is a good storyteller. And I will tell you from firsthand experience, Burt Reynolds is probably the best storyteller I've ever been around. Like, dude, at 80 years old in a halting voice, told the best stories. Talked about, here's another one. This is a good one. So he knew Marilyn Monroe, and you can read whatever you want to read into that. Maybe he meant the biblical sense. Maybe he didn't. Maybe they were just friends. But he's like, I took acting classes with Marilyn Monroe in New York City. He's like, and I moved up there. I was going to do theater. He knew somebody else who was in theater.
By the way, it's wild to think that they came up in similar times, because I associate her with like such an older, more not no old, I shouldn't say older, like more nostalgic time than I associate him.
Right.
But I think that's totally valid that they did, because
it took
he
him
kept
so
acting so
long.
much later.
Yes, it took him so long to break through that she.
That's wild.
So what he said was he said
like popped right.
He said, he goes, you want to know what makes a star? He said, I was out on the sidewalk. We were walking down Fifth Avenue. And he said,
and steam blew up from a thing, and she put her dress down. Is that?
He's like, okay. He goes, nobody paid attention to us. He's like, I'm walking down the street with Marilyn Monroe. And I think this is after she made that movie. Now that I think about this, listen, for the
7-Year Itch, I think is the name of it.
Yeah, listen, for the two people who are watching, if I got this wrong, don't correct me. Okay, I'm going off of memory, just telling you what I remember from that evening.
Especially that one family member, he was piping up. Just pipe down.
Curtis has heard this story before, actually.
Curtis, pipe down.
He says, I looked at her and he said something like, isn't this wild? Like, we're walking down the street, broad daylight in Manhattan, and like nobody recognizes you. And he says, and I remember this very clearly, she stopped, she looked at me, she smiled, she stood up, and suddenly she became Marilyn Monroe. And he said within 10 seconds, there were 500 people around us. He said she knew how to turn the switch on and become a star. And he said, there's only been a handful of people who ever could do that. He said that was the thing that made her different. As people talk about her looks, talk about her personality, whatever, he said she knew how to be a star. Just that presence, right? That you know, I can't do it because I'm just a hacky campaign guy talking on a computer to 5 people. But like I remember that very,
something though.
Yeah, I remember that very, very distinctively. And there was some other stuff he talked about doing Deliverance, and you know, doing his own stunts, and you know, he like broke his back on one of the scenes, and you know, still shot for like a month in freezing water, and it was all this kind of nonsense stuff. Like this crazy things that like I never would have thought of. So then I'm thinking,
have you written all this down? You should write all this down.
I feel like the more I tell it, it's like I kind of remember some of these things, but it's like, so like towards the end of the night, I'm thinking, you know, I feel like I overstayed my welcome. You know, people are coming over to him, you know, they want their moment with him. I kind of feel like I'm in the way. So I lean over to him and I just say to him, Mr. Reynolds, you know, thanks for having me tonight. Like, this has been like the thrill of a lifetime. I'm like, you have no idea. Like, you're one of my heroes. Like, I had your play set. I had a Smoking the Bandit play set when I was a kid. I've seen all your movies. And he goes, well, I hope not all.
Ace.
He goes, I hope not all of them. I go, no, I've seen pretty much all of them. By the way, that's the time he told me that he was going to be in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He actually, so he had gotten, this is true, I actually hadn't thought about this. I think it was a couple weeks before, he had just gotten back from being out in LA and reading with Quentin Tarantino.
Really?
Yeah, he was going to play the guy that was on the ranch.
Golly, but that was so recent. Do they just delay filming it?
No, so this would have been summer, fall 2016.
I feel like he's been gone longer than he has. That's what it is.
So he was like, and he said to me, and Tarantino has said this as well, that the Leo character was modeled after Burt Reynolds and his friendship with his man, And that was the whole reason why he did the movie. And Burt was going to do the cameo. He was going to be the old guy at the ranch. I can't remember who it was, and he told me, he's like, that where they shot that part, you know, where he goes up to the ranch and the cult members are up there, whatever. That's the real ranch where they used to do all the stunts and whatever. And he's like, we used to shoot up there, and I knew all these guys. I knew that guy, whoever owned the ranch, John something or whatever it was. You know, I was friends with him. I used to go riding up at that ranch, and you know, it's like, listen, you know,
it's wild.
People shit on you. You know, you make no money. Like, you're disrespected constantly. But like, you know, I got 45 minutes with Burt Reynolds, like literally one-on-one, just like you and I are chatting right now, uninterrupted. 45 minutes at table with Burt Reynolds, where I got to share with him, you know, hey man, you made an impact on my life, you know, and I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me. You didn't have to have me out here tonight. Like, this is really cool. And he's like, you know, thanks for coming. It was great to see you. Appreciate what you did for the candidate, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm getting up to leave. And this whole time I'm struggling in my head. I'm like, I have to get a picture. Like, I have to get a picture.
Okay. Oh, okay. So I want to hop in here, and I don't want to interrupt, but I'm gonna. Here's the difference for those maybe 4 of you still watching of whether or not you should remain in like the grassroots side of campaigns, or whether or not you should transition to the ops side of campaigns. And that is whether or not you feel the inherent need to get a picture with the candidate or with the elected. Yeah. And I'm not going to judge it. If you are what I like to call a FaceTime guy, and I don't mean like FaceTime with like your nieces or your cousins. If you're a guy that like wants the selfie to put on Instagram or put on Facebook, again, no judgment, you should stay on the grassroots side. You should be like the greeter when they're coming in at the airport, the arrival at the steakhouse, like the local coffee thing, whatever. Stay on the grassroots side. If you are the person who doesn't care about whether or not you have a picture with the elected official or the candidate, you are prime time for the ops side. I think I might have one picture with one of my principals ever.
I have 2.
And it was because she was a surrogate for the Romney campaign. And we were waiting backstage for an event in like Detroit, Cleveland. Rock and roll went in my head. It's fine. Yeah, Cleveland. And I have a picture with one of my principals. It's the only picture I have with one of my principals. So I just hopped in, and Jacob, I want to hear the rest of the story. But if you're the 6 of you still watching, you want the FaceTime picture to put on the Instagram and the things and the Facebook and whatever, and here I am with Marco Rubio or whoever, stay on the grassroots side. If you're trying to decide your future in life, if you don't care and you want to serve the cause greater and like further all the things, go to the ops side. Mm-hmm. Jacob, continue.
No, it's so good. That's dead on perfect. So I'm like, I know I have to get a picture. Like
I would have 100% taken the picture.
Yeah, but I was like, I was scared.
You have to.
So as I'm getting up, he looks over at his assistant and he said, I can't remember the guy's name, Brian or something, David. He's like, David, would you please get a picture of me and Jacob? Which is like the classiest thing ever, by the way. And you know this because you know how this usually goes.
100%.
It's the classiest thing ever. So if those of you who are watching, lead to
a question I'm going to ask you after this, but go.
Okay. If you want to know if Burt Reynolds was a classy guy, I'm telling you, he was a classy, and he knew how to play the game. He knew what being a star was and what the rules were, and he enjoyed being a star. And so I was like, yeah. And so I hand the guy my phone, and everybody gets out of the way. So like the side of the table clears away, and I slide into the table. And as I'm sliding in, and I'm actually going to share the picture. So for people who are still watching,
will I be able to see this?
Yeah, I'm going to share. I think so. If I do this correctly. Yeah, there we go.
Oh my God, this is fantastic.
So I slide in as I'm sitting down. Literally, as I'm
Who's
sitting
the
down,
female?
this chick just jumps in and like sits
Same
down.
question your wife asked, but like, who's the female?
First question she asked me. And
100%.
the answer is, I have no idea. I have no idea who she is. No idea. Like, people look at me and they go, oh, is that your wife? Whatever. I'm like, no, my wife is way better looking than this. Like, no, it's not my wife. So Bert, so we take the pictures. The guy takes like three, I have in this roll, there's like 4 or 5 pictures. And one of them is Bert's picking his ear. And then you can see there's like a guy just like click, 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 click. So he takes the picture, and so and the guy hands me the phone back, and Bert, Mr. Reynolds, looks at me and goes, Jacob, do you want? He goes, that was crap. You want to take another picture? I'm like, no, sir, that works. Like, if that's not the ultimate Burt Reynolds picture, like, I don't know what is. Like, me and Burt Reynolds and a blonde in the middle is the ultimate Burt Reynolds picture.
100% agree.
And I said that to him, and he laughed. And I was like, thank you, good night, sir. And I turned to walk out of the room. And so as I go out to my car, I'm walking out to the car with Jim, the security guy. And this is where I'm going to get in trouble. He says to me, Jacob, why didn't you bring your wife?
And you're like, because the invite was to me, and I was trying not to overstep those bounds.
If she's watching,
I'm trying.
That's true. That is the truth.
I'm trying.
It didn't occur to me, I mean, should I have? Yeah, I should have just brought her, but I didn't, because I was like, I didn't think I belonged there, let alone bring somebody with me, So, I mean, I've told slight variations of that story, but that's pretty much the gist of the story.
I'm really glad we have it on tape, and it's going to lead me to a question I'm asking you. Your entire political career, and again, this leads back to the, like, you should stay on the grassroots side versus you should go to the op side. We meet a lot of people, and I don't say this following statement as anything other than that cave I talked about earlier. Like, you meet like a lot of fantastic people, but every now and then you can't help but like fangirl / be stunned by who you're in front of. And that has happened to me in my entire political career twice. And I will share those with you. But I would like to ask you, other than Burt Reynolds, in your political career, who have you come into contact with that you have been like kind of leveled by being in front of? And by the way, that answer is how you know he's actually a political ops guy.
Yeah, honestly, none. I mean, I mean, I can tell you. Yeah.
I have 2.
Maybe Mitch Daniels, but not really, because I worked for him, and so it was kind of like a.
Even outside of both of my fangirl moments, are neither of them are electeds nor candidates.
Yeah, and I think what happens is, and you can appreciate this, is that I am very focused. I have I'm not really good at very many things. Really, probably not anything. But one thing I'm actually really good at is I can hyper focus. Like, I have the ability to, like, I can sleep in a crowded room. Okay. Like, I have the ability to block everything out.
That's terrifying.
And zone. No, I really can. And just like hyper focus on something. And what happens is when I get into like campaign mode, which is what my wife calls it, I'm so focused and obsessed with the job that I don't really take in the surroundings. All right.
I've had best guy friends and or candidates call that go mode, and they do not like Luxie in go mode.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Like, I don't recognize that the real world is going on. It's like you have this thing that you're doing.
You can't.
So I probably have run into people who, like, in hindsight, you're like, oh yeah, that was kind of cool, but I don't really remember anybody, like nobody stands out. I will tell you, I have some Haley Barber stories, which I can't tell tonight. We don't have time, but everybody's got Haley Barber stories.
Yeah, no, you can't.
But Haley's probably the only other one I could tell funny stories that like I really enjoyed, like hanging out with and going to have a bourbon with Haley and whatever. But outside of that, no. I mean, it really, and I say this, and it's a terrible thing to say, and it's probably not a great way to end this show, but it's work. It's a job. It's a grind. You go, you go make the donuts. You get up and make the donuts every day. It's not exciting. If you're interested in meeting people, and you're not, but this is for the audience at home. If you're interested in meeting people or hanging out with important people or being in the room when things are going on, you probably shouldn't be on this side of the business.
No. You should stay on the grass top side, work your butt off, be chosen to be a greeter at some situation.
Sure. Yep. I just never really cared.
Not the place.
I never
Nor
cared.
should you.
Yeah, and I think because the job is the candidate, right? Like your job is the principal.
Yes.
That's why you're there. And
there's a great story, in the same ilk of the story I told earlier about being on the convention floor and like having my face pressed to like this carpet siding of the VIP box. A gentleman his staffer approached and said like, "Hi, we're supposed to be in the box with Mrs. McCain at XYZ time. And like, we're blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Yeah, no, like, sorry, like we have this predetermined times and blah, blah, blah." And he went on and on and on. It was a chairman of the RNC, but I just didn't know, nor did I care.
Right.
And there's like another one where I worked for, I've worked for a couple inaugurals and was on a press riser, and a person was like trying to gain access to the press riser. And I don't watch Fox News. I don't watch a lot of things, but there's a guy and he's older, and maybe 2 of the 6 people watching will know who he is. But there's like one of the guys that's on like the 5 or something, and he like trying to get on the press riser, and I didn't know who he was, and I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm sorry, you don't have the right credentials." He's like, "Are you serious?" And I was like, I'm wholly serious, because I didn't know, and I'm just like in my whatever world, and I know I have to go to like the military ball and go from like being cold into like full blown black tie dress in 4 hours. And he couldn't get on my pressurizer, and because we live by those rules. I will share my 2, and I think we're way over time. I don't know what time it is, but we're gonna go. I have fangirled twice in my entire political career, and I think Republicans still watching, which I don't think any of them are, but if they were, are going to be disappointed, but that both of them were from the media world. And the first one was, I was in New Hampshire for the primary at like the courthouse in Portsmouth or something, and David Brooks was there, and as a moderate, like, I have a selfie with him, which if you're a political person, you know how embarrassing that is for me. Yes. But like, I was just, I like turned around and I was like loading the family and the friends and family and everybody onto this like gigantic bus. We did this like 7-city tour the last day of the primary, which we won for the record. And I totally fangirled there. And the other one is I was once traveling with Mrs. McCain on something holy. We were doing work. She suffers from migraines, and she does a lot of advocate work with regards to migraines. And we're doing this whole tour and going from like Philly to to New York. And we were in the train station, and Bob Schieffer was there. And he has like monogram luggage and the whole thing. Yes. And he approached Cindy, and she, of course, being absolutely lovely human. Cindy is a fantastic woman who, that could be a whole different conversation in itself. driven by purpose and the most amazing character. But all that to say, she's like, hey, this is Jen. I'm traveling with Jen. And I was just like, oh my God, how are you?
Yes.
And it's not that I'm not a person that, and by the way, Republicans would like repulse at the fact that both of those people were in the media, but these are just like people who stand for principle and have reported regardless of party and all the things that I stand for as a human anyway. So I completely fangirled. And those are the two people I fangirled out at my, and after kicking like people from Fox News off the stage and not knowing who the RNC president is and keeping him out of the box at the convention. Those are my people. Anyway.
It's a great way to end the show.
Great way to end the show.
Jen, how
this has been great.
Where can they find you?
Me?
Yeah.
Twitter is probably the best for this particular constituency, which is at Jen Lux. I still think we should come back and do like an October Oppo file episode. You already told the Burt Reynolds story, so I don't need to.
I know. I feel like
that. But this is. Yeah. This has been lovely, and I appreciate you having me.
No, this has actually been a lot of fun, and appreciate you doing this, and it lived up to my expectations, and appreciate everybody watching this. Stay tuned. I will share the next scheduled show. So you stick around for a minute.
Will do.